Hello, welcome to another edition of Iridium Rock and Metal Reviews. Today I'm going to do 1994 ranking the years. Hopefully you caught my 1993 video. Some not very good choices in 93. Quite a bad year for rock and metal in my opinion. 94 is a lot better. On this list I've got 7 of my favourites. I'll go from least favourite, obviously of my top 7, to my best album of 94. And I'm going to start with number 7, obviously, and that's Korn's debut album, Korn. This is an album that back in the 90s, if I was doing this list, this would maybe be number 1 or number 2, because I was really into this album. I think at the time the lyrical content was quite shocking. You know, Jonathan Davis, the singer, a lot of it's personal stuff, and he didn't hold back, obviously. I think it hit home with a lot of people, probably, that were a lot of fans that were going through some stuff at the time, and it was really getting his aggression out. You know, Blind was they couldn't have started the album with anything better. There's a little bit of, I suppose you could say, felt a little bit hip hop as well. Some of the beats in this, all across the album, actually, is one of the big things about Korn and the samples and stuff. My favourite tracks are Lower, Clown. I like Faggot, Predictable. Even though the band, I think, they didn't like that track themselves at the time. They thought this was the weak part of the album. Predictable was one of my favourite tracks on the album. Love it. Underrated. Daddy, that ended the album. I don't know, it's quite an hard listen to it. Obviously, if you know the band, which you probably do, at the end, Jonathan Davis, he's sort of screaming in the studio and crying. Bit hard to listen to, really, even on the first listen when I first heard it. I actually like the track, but find it hard to keep it on if I listen to it now. But yeah, it was a really good album. Like I'd say, this would probably be one of my top ones in the 90s, but now it's only reached me number 7. I think a lot of that's to do with staying power. I think, you know, I might listen to it a little bit now, Korn, but it's not on my stereo as much as some other bands. But it's good, a really good debut. And I'll give Korn 8 out of 10. Right, next number 6, Queensryche, Promised Land. I like this album, but straight away, even when it came out, I knew it wasn't as strong as what had come before it. Empire was hard to follow up, and obviously Mind Crime and Rage for All are 3 of the best albums of all time, in my opinion, of any group, of any band, you know, across all genres of metal. You know, it's hard to follow up when you do a consistent albums like that, and this is where this sound of Queensryche started to change a little bit. I suppose that you could say this one's a little bit more progressive than the other ones. I weren't a bad track. I think it was the lead single. Damaged was a little bit more in the territory of their other stuff. Bridge, a bit more of a mellower track. Promised Land was a good track. A bit of sax using that as well. So, but My Global Mind was another underrated one that I quite liked. So, you know, this was a good album. It was solid, but I don't know, it was a bit of a turning point in Queensryche if you look at it now, especially what came after. Not one of my top Queensryches, but still a good album, you know, in its own right. So I'll give this one 8 out of 10. Next, I know this is ranking the albums, but it is an EP, and it's such an important EP. And for me, I got this at the same time as the Sap. It came in, I think it was Sap was re-released with Jar of Flies, and it's Alice in Chains, Jar of Flies, stroke Sap. I'm gonna do them together, if you like. So Alice in Chains were obviously riding high after Dirt, which was my favourite album of Alice in Chains and probably one of my top 5 albums of all time. And they brought out, which a lot of bands were doing at the time, an acoustic album. This wasn't fully acoustic. It had some electric guitar in it, but it was for the most part acoustic, and it obviously carried on what Alice in Chains were all about, and that's the harmonies between Jerry and Lane, the songwriting, the dark, the feel of the songs, even though there was some songs on here that weren't, had more of an upbeat feel, I suppose. No Excuses being one of them, great track. But Rotten Apple was a good one. One of my favourite songs of Alice in Chains, Nutshell. Big fan favourite, obviously. Love that song. That can be played now today, as fresh as it was all them years ago. It's brilliant. Loved I Stay Away. And on the Sap EP as well, you got Brother, which is a good track. Right Turn. I think the Sap EP really fitted in nicely with Jar of Flies, even though it's a few years earlier. I think they together, it was a great, two great EPs making a great album, really. So yeah, excellent. Jar of Flies, stroke Sap, and I'll give that 8.5 out of 10. Well, my next one, Tesla, Bust a Nut. So this was a bit of a difficult time for Tesla. Obviously grunge was in its full flow at this point. You'd have Nirvana, Soundgarden, Pearl Jam, Alice in Chains were some of the biggest bands around. So they were, what always has impressed me about Tesla is they haven't strayed from their sound. A lot of bands, a lot of the 80s bands came out with stuff and they were trying to fit in with the grunge movement, down tuning guitars, and it was, but the Tesla have always stuck to their traditional rock and roll, if you like, heavy rock and roll. But even though they did, a slight dip in form with this for me, but still love the album. I think that the difference between this and the 3 albums before is consistency. I think with Mechanical Resonance, the Great Radio Controversy, and of course the album before, oh god, it's escaped my blooming mind now. I mean, reviewed it the other day. That was a Psychotic Supper, sorry. With those albums, there was no weakness, front to back, every track spot on. I think with Bust a Nut, I think especially when it got to the back of the album, it wasn't for me as strong. So like the front of the album had some blinding songs on it. You had the intro obviously going into Invited, which was a good track. Solution, wow, what a song that was. Shine Away is the standout track for me on this album. That guitar part, them riffs that come in just before the solo, I think it is, like just past midway in the song. Absolutely airs on the back of the neck job, that is. Need Your Loving was good. Rubber Band on the back of the album, on the backside of the album was good. I think they did a cover version of Games People Play on here, it weren't too bad. But like I say, that it's a good album, but the consistency wasn't the same as the ones before. I'll also give Tesla Bust a Nut 8.5 out of 10. Right, next, my number 3. Pantera, Far Beyond Driven. Now, this, for me, had the best guitar tone I've ever heard on any album ever. So heavy, really heavy. I mean, Dimebag Darrell, rest in peace. What a guitar sound on this. I've never heard anything so heavy. I mean, you could tell it nearly got there on the album before Vulgar Display of Power, but on this one, there's so much depth to that guitar sound. I've never heard anything like it, and I've never heard anything since. There's some things that have come a little bit close. The New Testament album's got a good guitar sound, but nothing like this. And if you think all them years ago, absolutely brilliant. There's the 3 songs together on this that are just some of the best stuff that Pantera's done. Becoming, 5 Minutes Alone, and I'm Broken. Wow, what 3 tracks they are together on there. And then on the back of the album, you got one of my favourite tracks also from Pantera, Shedding Skin. Absolutely brilliant. I must admit, I do like the slower Pantera stuff. I'm a big fan of Down, Phil Anselmo's side project. Well, it's his main band now. But I do like them a bit better than Pantera, but this album was the best Pantera album for me. They even stuck a decent, real good version of Planet Caravan on the back of this album and all. I'll give Pantera Far Beyond Driven 9 out of 10. So, number 2, Stone Temple Pilots, Purple. Love Stone Temple Pilots. I think that after this, they went downhill for me. But the first 2 albums were spot on. Absolutely brilliant. Scott Weiland again, performing, just brilliant voice. Loved his voice. He never did anything really. I don't know, he was a solid singer. You know, he wasn't a person that could hit the heights of some other singers, but that weren't obviously what Stone Temple Pilots were all about. He was a really soulful singer, brilliant voice. Meat Plough is one of my favourite songs from Stone Temple Pilots. What an excellent heavy song that is, starting off this one. Interstate Love Song, you know, and single. Sometimes you could say it was a little bit overplayed at the time, but loved it. Unglued was a good one for me. Vaseline, good track, bit different for them. And Army Ants as well, loved it. Heavy track at the end of the album, one of the lesser known ones I suppose. But Purple was a real strong, solid follow-up to their core album. And I'll give Stone Temple Pilots Purple 9 out of 10. My number 1 album for 1994 is Soundgarden Superunknown. I think this is brilliant. You know, when I was looking through this list, trying to figure out what was going to be my number 1, number 2, number 3 around them sides, I went through the track listings, had another listen to a few of them again. And if you actually look at the track listing on this Superunknown, well, for me, every song is standout. They all are as good as each other. They're so consistent, this album. It is spot on. There's no weak tracks. Whereas you look at the ones that were number 2, number 3, number 4 for me on my list, there's a few, just the odd 2 or 3, maybe 4 tracks that, and the quality ain't there. But I think this Superunknown album from Soundgarden was their highlight of their career. It was on top of their game. They mellowed out a little bit, I'd say, from the album before, Bad Motorfinger. Brought a bit more melody into them, but at the same time keeping the heaviness, you know, that they were known for. Some of the tracks on here, I mean, it is, every one of them are brilliant, but my standout tracks are the singles. Fell on Black Days. I like Spoon Man as well. Fell on Black Days though is spot on there. Mailman, loved it. Head Down, bit psychedelic, some would say a bit Beatlesy, but a bit controversial. I fucking hate the Beatles, can't stand them, and I'm probably going to get a lot of stick for that, but it's just a matter of fact. They just never resonated with me whatsoever. But Head Down, I love it. I absolutely love it. You obviously have Black Hole Sun. I might have listened to that a lot. You know, you hear it now. You know, it's just like overplayed maybe, but you got to look at the quality of that song. Absolutely spot on. But the favourites of mine are these next 3: Limo Wreck, The Day I Tried to Live, and 4th of July. 4th of July, what a brooding, plodding, doomy song that is. But with Chris Cornell's vocals over the top of that, wow. I mean, what a brilliant vocalist. What a brilliant vocalist. Absolutely spot on. So that's it. Soundgarden Superunknown is obviously 10 out of 10. Right, honourable mentions. I've got 3. These are pretty good. They weren't going to make it into my top 7, but they were strong, solid albums. This first one I got into big time, and this is another one, like I said, has dropped away over the years and I don't listen to it anymore, but you know, you can't deny it was really, really good at the time, and that's Downset's debut album, Downset. These were these were rap metal. The reason it's probably not, for me, as good as Rage Against the Machine is it was a bit too hardcore for me. I liked looking at the track listing when I looked at this the other day. It's like oh. It's alright, coronavirus ain't a sneeze. Alright, it's a cough. So when I looked at the track listings for this the other day, it was like half and half. You know, I didn't like the shouting track so much, but there is a lot of shouting on it. But the rapping and that just fits in well with that, with the rhythm guitar through the verses is spot on. So that was Downset. You got Corrosion of Conformity for me, brought their best album out, Deliverance. Yeah, this was a really good one. I saw these actually with Metallica. I think it was supporting this album. It was really good. Some really good tracks on there. And the last one, Sabotage, they got to have a mention. You know, they brought Handful of Rain out. It was a difficult time for the band after the tragedies that happened in the band as well. So, you know, to even produce music is a feat on its own after something like that happening, and it was a good strong album, but not quite making my my top 7. So that's it. Good year for 1994, brilliant year. Please subscribe to my channel and you can click down on the right hand corner subscribe button. Put the alerts on for me videos coming out, because there are lots of them. I put one a day out if I can. And also give me, now you know my taste, these subscribers guys that know my taste in music now, and I'm getting some of them, give me some things to listen to. If there's any new albums coming out that I can review, let me know what you think, and I'll give them a good listen to. I might even start doing some reactions to videos as well, or reactions to some singles as well, just to keep it a bit fresher. A bit difficult at the moment, not a lot coming out in the way of new releases at the moment, but there are some ones that I'm looking forward to later on this month, around about the end, 22nd I think it is of May. So they're going to be ones I'm going to be probably reviewing. So thanks a lot for listening guys, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.